Today, we'll be looking at how successful digital transformation has strong leadership at its core. From Excel Esports changing the game in the esports industry, to Archant transforming their working culture, and BT sharing insights from one of the UK's largest organisations. We'll look at the role that technology and leadership around technology is playing in enabling a new world of work. And with coronavirus having reportedly sped up UK companies' digital strategy by an average of almost 5.5 years, there really has never been a more critical time to seek out inspiration for your digital transformation journey. Our first guest today is Justin Parsons, Technology Director at Archant. This modern media company with 1,000 staff across 25 locations undertook a brilliant transformation journey using technology to move their business and their people to a much more agile and flexible way of working. And they really did do this just in the nick of time, so that once lockdown hit in March, they were ready to move their entire business online seamlessly. Here is a sneak peek at their story.
Justin Parsons, Director of Technology at Archant. My role involves the support of the employees who work for the Archant organisation. Our transformation programme has been about people, not just technology. We had a vision of using the power of the right technology to enable a better workplace for everyone. We were focused on mobility, flexibility, productivity, and everything we did was about achieving that.
Archant is one of the UK's most established media companies. With over 1,000 staff across multiple locations, we've been around for 170 years. And as the world of news and content changes, we're changing with it.
We've given every single area of our business an opportunity to say to their staff, you don't have to work in an office to be productive. It is a fundamentally different place to what it was before, but it's been designed with agility and with flexibility in mind, and our technology can now support that, which it couldn't do previously. So we still have the office. We also now have the home office. We also now have anywhere that has a secure internet connection. I genuinely believe every single member of Archant has benefited in some way from the work we've done.
Hey Justin, thank you for joining us today to share Archant's incredible transformation journey, one that, as we saw in the VT there just now, you were instrumental in leading. That term digital transformation, it's got a specific meaning, doesn't it? It's more about moving traditional print and ad revenue online. So your journey's been more of a technology transformation. So tell us more about your transformation and about your guiding principles for its success.
Yeah, that's right, David. I mean, first and foremost, this probably started 3 years ago. And it was probably driven off the need that the workplace was evolving, the workplace was changing. We also wanted to challenge a number of ways that we were doing things. We felt we were doing them because we always have, and maybe there was a better approach, a better way to carry out those activities. But more importantly, we wanted to move away from this concept of almost telling our employees they could only be productive whilst they were in an office. That seemed a strange concept as technology was evolving. But also what I wanted to do was avoid it being a technical project. Actually, I wanted it to encompass the organisation as a whole. And as a result of that, we sort of tied all of those things together and made a decision from that point that anything we did had to align itself to either flexibility, mobility, or the productivity of our workforce.
Sure, and that meant that you were perfectly placed when coronavirus hit. Just to move on, we had a poll on the screen, and this kind of comes back to that theme of people, perhaps. We've been asking which aspect of our viewers' transformation strategies that they've accelerated first, if any, and the response is people. That's the area that they've accelerated first, followed by business processes, which is kind of interesting because back to your transformation, it was very clear from the film that your journey also began first with your people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad the poll came back and supported that. That's given you a nice in, David.
Me too.
But I mean, I didn't felt that may be a sort of easy proposition in terms of maybe moving it forward. And it was more a case of our business was changing, our technology wasn't. And there was a number of examples where people were joining our organization and we were almost having to ask them to unskill themselves in terms of maybe some software products that they were familiar with, namely the office productivity tools. We had a lot of feedback from our sales force, from our commercial guys in terms of sales pitches with old kit, old software. They were immediately on the back foot, and we wanted to change that. But in addition, we also wanted to provide that level of flexibility for our staff as well, so that things now that have become almost common ground a little bit, capability to do the school runs, not have to sit in commuter traffic every day. We wanted to allow people the opportunity to see how that worked for them as well. So our existing hardware didn't support that. So we needed to change that.
Sure. And, you talk about that flexibility, that agility, that's important for your existing workforce to empower them, but also in not only retention, but also recruitment as well, and making sure that you're able to attract the best talent. So a big transformation there, kind of cultural one and a technology one to support that. How did you approach getting that buy-in? And I know you did some clever thinking around kind of flipping that investment on its head and moving from CapEx to OpEx and stuff. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, I think that was crucial, to be honest. I think if I'm being very, very honest with myself, if I tried to seek buy-in from a very traditional way that we had with technology projects, i.e. asking for a not insignificant upfront investment and spend, i.e. CapEx, I'm not sure that would have been as well received as where we ended up. And as you rightly said, we flipped that more towards an OpEx approach. We flipped it more towards a sort of lease purchase approach. And what that's given us really is a couple of things. First and foremost, it's given us a more easier and more robust refresh program from the point of view of as our technology ages, we're in a cycle to know when that's going to need refreshing. So that was important. Obviously, spreading the cost of the payments in terms of rather than having that upfront investment clearly is more palatable from a point of view of cash going out the door. So that was well received. What we also did was try to demonstrate the upside of productivity improvement as well. And if you look at maybe the total cost of your workforce, you don't need to move the needle too much in terms of what you anticipate and think might be a productivity gain as a sort of percentage of your workforce to sort of pay for any level of investment in terms of hardware, software, and the work that we did. So those two things were really important. But I think the third area of importance was around the capability to demonstrate. It goes back a little bit to what I said a minute ago. This wasn't just a technical project. This was about demonstrating it was something that would benefit everybody. It would benefit all of our staff. So I think when we got to that point of the seeking buy-in, that resonated very, very clearly with people.
And that's that thing, isn't it, of kind of changing that mind shift from technology being a barrier traditionally to technology becoming an enabler, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's one of the things that we've been trying to do from a point of view of the sort of organisation that I sit in terms of making sure that we can be as responsive as we can to the demands of the wider business and making sure we can provide these things to them. And I think the starting point around giving them the flexibility, the mobility to work from wherever, I think has been a great start for that.
Lots of practical advice there, but talk us through the specifics, what you can, of what you've been able to roll out, and interestingly, that timeline as well.
Yeah, the approach was very different to ones we've done in the past. So I would suggest it probably started 18 months ago. The guys at BT organised a number of vendor days that we had in place, which was basically gave us an opportunity to refresh ourselves in the marketplace from a point of view of hardware manufacturers and hardware vendors. We typically bought a particular vendor. And going back to what I said about challenging things, the reason why we did that was because we always had. So refreshing ourselves, understanding what the market had to offer was important. From the point of view of flexibility and mobility, we'd already made the decisions that we would go laptops for all staff. That wasn't the case. We had about 40% of our workforce were still using traditional desktops. The next stage was probably one of the key ones, to be honest, in that we created a number of user personas. So we aligned different roles within our business to them having different requirements from the point of view of the laptop build and device they ended up with. So as an example, somebody who may work in a very graphic design and heavy environment would need something very, very different to somebody who's out in the field and consumes office products 90% of their time. And what that allowed us to do was adopt this approach of one size doesn't fit all. And equally, what it also allowed us to do is the price points now for our devices became very, very different. And all of a sudden, the commercials were far more palatable. So that was important. That moved us to a position in August last year where we had our final requirements. The task was then very much on me to get that sign off, the final buy-in, as we spoke about before, which we were fortunate enough to. The project rollout kicked off very, very quickly then, and come January of this year, 98% of our hardware was out in the environment, which, as you've touched on, from a timeline point of view, from a date perspective, that was very, very timely.
Sure thing. Finally, for now, before we move on to some quick questions, based on your own journey, what would be your advice to our viewers today who are embarking on their transformation journey?
It's a few things really for me. I mean, finding a way to make everybody feel part of the project was, I think, integral. As I've said a couple of times, I think if I'd focused this on being a pure technical project, not sure it would have received attraction, maybe not as quickly as what I would have wanted. Obtaining feedback from people, again, some specifics. We thought from a technical point of view, speed of device might be important because we're technical people. Actually, the feedback we got from our users was weight. It's all about the weight of the device. I don't want to carry around a brick on my back. So I'd be happy to have a slightly smaller screen if it weighs less. So that was important. And find a way that you can relate it to something. Again, not technical. We have aligned it to productivity. Productivity was the route that we went down, and I think that resonated quite well. And the final point I would say, one size doesn't fit all. The sooner you move away from maybe that as a mindset, I think that's been critical for us.
Thank you very much indeed. Got time for just a couple of questions for you. Before we do that, just to say apologies if there's one or two audio glitches there. It's the world of virtual events in which we're living in at the moment, but hopefully it's all coming through to you as clearly as it can. We had some questions, Justin, and they're on my little panel over here. So I will ask this one here. I've no idea who it's from, I'm afraid, but how do you plan to further transform digitally in this current hybrid world we now find ourselves in, with people working out of offices and at home? So next digital transformation, albeit notwithstanding your definition of digital transformation, but the next technology transformation step.
I understand. I think that's a really interesting question from the point of view of what do the offices of the next few years look like? And I'm not necessarily sure I have an answer for it, but I know the question that we need to answer. And that's really around, it was very easy when everybody was in an office to use technology as you needed it to. It was very easy when we first went into lockdown as a result of the pandemic and everybody was online in a virtual environment. That was very easy as well. But as people are moving back to offices, and clearly that's in flux at the moment as well, I think that is a challenge that there is out there in terms of how do people embrace that hybrid environment that you work in. And I think what I'd also align to that is how you also virtually or digitally create a sense of community within your workforce as well. The office is very good at doing that, and I think that maybe might be something to consider as well. The specific thing that we're looking at next, David, is all around telephony and how we can make that agile for people from the point of view of adoption of soft phone technology, which is something that we're doing right now.
Sure thing. Listen, thank you very much indeed for taking time out to answer your questions.